Hi, my name is Julia, and this is part 6 of how my amazing aunt was conned by a con artist who manipulated her in her most vulnerable time of life. So, just fast forward to this past January 2025, I got a series of calls from my father. My aunt had been admitted to the hospital. Pat and my aunt had an appointment to see the new attorney, a different one than she had had because he had retired, to update the will and make those changes that we talked about in part 5. And when Pat got there, he found her not feeling well, a little unresponsive, and ultimately took her to the hospital. At the hospital, thank goodness I was on her HIPAA. I was able to speak with her attorney, and she did have extensive liver cancer. She didn't want anybody to know and wanted that kept private. She refused any further testing and simply just wanted to go home. Pat was with her at the hospital and going back and forth between her house and the hospital, and he and I were in a lot of communication during this time. I wanted to be as polite and supportive as I could to him because ultimately he did bring her to the hospital, and I do appreciate that. She was sent home via hospice on, let me think, the 9th, the evening of the 9th. And I was doing all I could to fly down to Texas. Ultimately got a flight out on the 10th. When I asked Pat to go home before I got there, back to Houston, and I hired medical care to be there until I got there so she would have professional medical care because the night before she had fallen out of bed and Pat called me and didn't know what to do, telling me she had fallen on the floor, he couldn't get her back in bed, she was in respiratory distress, and I said call 911, call 911. And it was, I don't know who to call, do I call a neighbor, you call 911. And he just seemed very confused about what to do because my ailing aunt, who is clearly dying, is on the floor and on respiratory distress. So I again advised him, call 911, ask for a lift and assist. That's what they're there for. But it took a good 10 minutes of my aunt being on the floor before he finally figured out, okay, I guess I'll call 911. So I was a little honestly, I was a little annoyed and I was very fearful for my aunt, and I needed her to have professional medical care. So I did call in some professional medical care, and I asked Pat to leave as soon as he could, as soon as the professional care got there. I arrived at my aunt's house on January the 10th, and I sang with her and I got in bed with her and I held her and we were together all night, and ultimately she had the most beautiful passing over to the other side on Saturday, January 11th. And that was the very, very best part of this entire thing, which is sad because I missed her terribly. But the very best part was that my aunt died in my arms, and it was a beautiful passing, and I know that she went running to my uncle to dance in his arms. We're going to get into the length, depth, and breadth of the con. I knew it was bad, I just didn't know how bad until later on that day. Stay tuned, and thank you so much for watching and following.